It had been a year since I married Jerry, the love of my life. Our relationship was full of love, laughter, and support. I worked from home as an accountant, while Jerry ran a car parts business. Though he was busy, we always made time for each other. We loved attending parties with Jerry's friends and business partners. I felt happy being part of his world. But one night, everything changed. At a barbecue, I met Maria, Jerry's ex-girlfriend. From the moment she saw me, I could tell she didn't like me. And soon she made it clear. Maria was tall, blonde, and confident. She acted like she owned the place. The moment she saw us, she smirked. Well, if it isn't Jerry and his wife, she said, making the word sound like an insult. I smiled and reached out my hand. Nice to meet you, Maria. I'm Lauren. She barely glanced at my hand before turning to Jerry. Shawnee, darling, it's been too long, she purred, using a nickname that made my stomach twist. Jerry quickly replied, Good to see you, Maria. Lauren and I are doing great. But I didn't trust her. Maria wasn't just an ex. She was trouble. She showed up at every party and found ways to make me uncomfortable. Her comments were sharp but always disguised as jokes. Lauren, that's an interesting outfit. I didn't know the librarian look was back in style. She laughed as her eyes scanned my simple dress. I forced a smile. I think it's perfect for a dinner party. Maria chuckled. Of course, sweetie. Not everyone can pull off fashion like me. I saw her plan. She wanted to make me feel small. And Jerry? He didn't see the danger yet. Then she took things online. Maria posted photos from our gatherings, making sure to crop me out. One day I saw a cruel post, Maria standing next to an embarrassing photo of me. Who do you think is a better match for Jerry? Vote in the comments. My hands shook as I read through the replies. Most people voted for Maria. The final comment stung the most. Looks like the people have spoken. Jerry must be crazy to pick plain Jane over me. That night, I showed Jerry. This has to stop. She's going too far. Jerry sighed. Lauren, I know she's being petty, but I can't just cut her off. Her dad is an important business partner. My heart sank. So I'm just supposed to let her insult me? Jerry pulled me into a hug. Number, I'll talk to her. But nothing changed. Maria continued flirting with Jerry at parties, ignoring me and making me feel like an outsider. I knew exactly what she wanted, to make me feel insecure. And Jerry, even though he loved me, didn't understand how serious this was. But I did. And I wasn't going to let her win. The worst moment happened at a birthday party. Maria arrived late, wearing a dress that looked like she was going to a fashion show. She walked straight up to Jerry and ignored me completely. Jevy, darling, you look amazing tonight, she said, touching his arm. My jaw tightened. Jerry gently pulled away. Thanks, Maria, but I'm here with my wife. She flipped her hair and laughed. Oh, come on, just one dance? For old time's sake? Jerry refused and Maria's face changed. That's when I knew this wasn't just jealousy. She wanted to ruin my marriage. Maria didn't stop. She started leaving flirty comments on Jerry's social media. At parties, she loudly talked about their past, making sure I heard every word. But her cruelest trick happened when she invited me to dinner, pretending she wanted to be friends. When I arrived, the table was full, except there was no seat for me. Maria smirked. Oh, Lauren, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. No room for extras. People at the table looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke. I felt my face heat up with embarrassment. But instead of leaving, I smiled. I had a plan. I turned to the restaurant manager. Could I get a seat, please? He nodded. But before he could move, Maria snapped, She wasn't invited. The manager ignored her and returned with a chair. Madam can sit wherever she wishes. After all, she owns this restaurant. Silence filled the room. Maria's face turned pale. Owns it? She whispered. Jerry's friends looked at me in shock. "Lauren, you never told us." I shrugged. I don't like to brag. I prefer to see people's true character first. Maria's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She had finally lost. I left the restaurant feeling victorious. Maria had no power over me anymore. A few days later, Jerry returned from a business trip. I told him what happened. He shook his head, laughing. "You handled it perfectly, Lauren." But Maria wasn't done. She tried to humiliate me one last time, at a big business event. She sneered when she saw me. "This event is for important people," she said. "Not some lucky accountant." I smiled and waved over 3 men, my father and 2 of the most powerful business executives. "Dad, great to see you!" Maria's face turned white. Her father, one of the executives, looked furious. "Maria, enough!" Maria blinked. "Daddy, no." "You're cut off," he said firmly. "No more money, no more apartment. You've embarrassed me for the last time." Maria gasped. "You don't mean that?" He ignored her. "Lauren, I apologize for my daughter's behavior. She's embarrassed our family." Then he looked at Maria. "Leave. Now." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Daddy, please." But he turned away, done with her. Maria stood there, alone, as everyone watched. For the first time, she had lost everything, and I had finally won. Maria disappeared after that night. Jerry and I continued going to parties, and without her, they were much more fun. One evening, Jerry wrapped his arms around me. "It's amazing how peaceful things are now." I smiled. "It really is." Jerry raised an eyebrow. "Have you heard anything about Maria?" I shook my head. "No, but I heard a rumor. Her dad sent her away to another state. He didn't want her embarrassing the family anymore." Jerry sighed. "She had everything but never appreciated it." I nodded. "Some people only learn when they lose everything." Maria disappeared after that night. Jerry and I continued going to parties, and without her, they were much more enjoyable. The air felt lighter, the conversations were real, and I no longer felt like I had to defend my place beside Jerry. One evening, as we were getting ready for another gathering, Jerry hugged me from behind. "You know," he said, "these events are much better without Maria." I smiled. "I was just thinking the same thing." He raised an eyebrow. "Have you heard anything about her?" I shook my head. "No, but I think her father sent her away." We both knew Maria wasn't the type to disappear forever. I had a feeling she was out there, plotting her next move. But for now, I focused on my life. One morning, I received an email that made my heart race. It was an invitation to the Entrepreneur of the Year award ceremony. My restaurant had been nominated for a prestigious award. Excited, I told Jerry, and he beamed with pride. "You deserve this, Lauren." The event was in 2 weeks, and I was both nervous and excited. I had worked so hard, and now I was finally being recognized. The night of the ceremony arrived, and Jerry and I dressed up for the grand event. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, and I chose a simple but elegant gown that made me feel confident. As we entered the ballroom, the place was filled with the city's most successful business people. I felt proud to be among them. Jerry introduced me to several of his colleagues, all of whom congratulated me. But then, just as I was about to relax, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "What are you doing here?" I turned around, and there she was. Maria. Maria looked furious. She was dressed in an expensive gown, but her eyes burned with jealousy. "This event is for real business leaders," she hissed. "Not some accountant who got lucky." I stayed calm and smiled. "I was invited," I said, holding up my invitation. Maria's face twisted in anger. "You don't belong here," she snapped. But before she could say more, I spotted 3 men walking toward us. My father, Maria's father, and another top businessman. "Dad!" I greeted warmly, hugging my father. Maria's eyes widened in horror. "Your dad?" she stammered. The tables had turned once again. Maria's father, Mr. Bryan, looked embarrassed. "Maria, enough!" His voice was sharp. "You humiliated yourself once. Don't do it again." Maria paled. "Daddy, no, I was just—" "I warned you," he interrupted coldly. "Your childish behavior has consequences." His voice grew louder, drawing attention from the crowd. "I have decided to cut you off for good. No more money, no more apartment. You will not embarrass me again." Maria gasped, her confidence crumbling. "Daddy, please," she begged, but he turned away. Jerry stepped beside me, shaking his head. "I finally remember why I broke up with you," he said. As Maria stood there humiliated, the announcer called my name. I had won the award. The crowd clapped as I walked onto the stage, my heart racing. Standing in front of the audience, I realized something. Maria had tried so hard to ruin me, but in the end, she only ruined herself. I smiled, holding the award. In the audience, Jerry and my father beamed with pride. Maria had finally learned that cruelty never wins. And as I stood there, stronger than ever, I knew I had everything I needed. A loving husband, a successful career, and a future free of Maria's drama.